Hello and welcome to Superconnectivity. I am your host, Charlie Esser, and with me as always is
Bill Parrish.
And tonight we have Superconnectivity Battleworld Edition. I'm calling it Battleworld Edition because we're going to talk about Battleworld, and much like Battleworld, we're probably going to get into some disjointed things that don't seem to quite belong on Battleworld, but are there anyway. So, for those of you who listened to the all-new Marvel Roundup this week, and you should, we discussed Secret Wars 2, or Secret Wars Issue 2, 2 of 8, which gives us the origin story of Battleworld. Doom created it out of the darkness, and all hail mighty Doom. But, as we discussed, there seems to be some problems with Doom's creation. Doom did not make a perfect world, which is obvious because he did not have the ability to. And this is the weakness of Doom. He clearly had to grab pieces of universes as he could, and it kind of as I'm thinking about it, as he's building out this universe, I'm thinking that he had to just reach out through space and time and get the pieces that he stuck together. And which is why he has, a place like Greenland, which I believe is supposed to be populated entirely by Hulks. And also Marvel, which is populated by cartoon baby versions of superheroes and supervillains. I wonder if there's a baby Doom there. That's crazy. And New Quack City, Howard the Duck's former Duck World. It doesn't make sense, anything on Battleworld. And I think the fact that he's trying to hold it together is going to be what the crux of Battleworld is. That as there's this idea that, if the entire universe came into existence 5 minutes ago, but came into existence as it is now, you wouldn't have any way to tell the difference. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference between your memories of, 10 years ago, and if they had been just created just 5 minutes ago, and what really happened, 10 years ago. And so we have everyone presenting as, oh yes, Doom created the universe, and we have been here for millennia, and, yada, yada, yada. But is that really the case? Or is it that Doom, when he created this world, pulled these people together and essentially, as I said, amalgamated the multiverse in the way that when Amalgam Comics merged the DC and Marvel universes to create the Amalgam universe, and everyone in the Amalgam universe just accepted that their history and their future were real, that is essentially what happened here. We know that this universe just came into existence, but Doom has filled it with history. There is a past and there's a future, or at least we assume there's a future. But we do not yet know what that future holds, and we do not know how far in the past Doom wrote history. And it's interesting when we go inside Battleworld. And when you're looking at the formations where we see the life raft hit, and I'm trying to find them because you can actually see, I think it's maybe in the later one, you can see in the rock formations the shape of where was it? You can like see Galactus.
Yeah.
Because in there, or perhaps that is supposed to be one of the heads of the living tribunal, but I think that's supposed to be Galactus, yeah. That you have this crushed, other-dimensional being that is at the core of Battleworld, that there is these pieces of things that don't belong there. Because, of course, as we see later, you see Galactus being led by young Franklin Richards. Now, it's important to remember, and this is what I thought is interesting, is on Hickman's run, on the Avengers, we meet grown-up Franklin Richards in the future at the end of all things. And he's adult Franklin Richards. And he's telling Captain America at that time, oh, do you want to know, yeah, he said, yeah, I can tell you anything. I can tell you who started the incursions. I can tell you how it ends. And of course, for whatever reason, they don't decide to do that. They decide to, some petty thing with, Iron Man, I think. But was the answer that he gets when he gets the one question with this person who at the end of all things, but what that means is that Franklin Richards went through Battleworld, went through all the incursions. He knows what happens. He knows how it happened. He is aware of where it's going. And when we see Franklin Richards here, I couldn't help but wonder, what does Franklin know? Because, that's young Franklin with his Galactus. What does he know? And what is he telling Doom? As I discussed, there is the possibility that the Doom we're seeing isn't really Doom, that could be Reed Richards in Doom's armor.
Wait, are you talking about Secret Wars 2?
It's 2. When they show you Galactus, you see the blonde-haired boy who is sitting Indian style in Galactus's hand. That's Franklin Richards.
Is that? Oh, I thought that was Alex Powers.
No. It's Franklin Richards because you know that Galactus from the Fantastic Four comic, where it was at the end of Hickman's run on the Fantastic Four comic. Basically, older grown-up Franklin and Valeria come back in time to assist the Fantastic Four in overcoming the problems that what's about to destroy the universe at that moment. Get them through that. And during that, basically Galactus dies, and then Franklin uses his powers to resurrect Galactus, and then Galactus becomes essentially Galactus becomes Franklin's pet. Because that's how powerful Franklin Richards is. And when you think about that, when you think about how powerful Franklin Richards is in that scenario, and here we have him with his Galactus, you have to ask, if he is being allied with Doom, does Franklin probably knows way more about what's going on than even Valeria does at this point. Because Valeria seems very much in to have drunk the Doom Kool-Aid as everyone else on this planet. I don't buy that Franklin. I buy that Franklin is still his otherworldly self and is here because he knows more of what's going on than anyone else. At least that's my assumption. As we've said, we do have this issue with multiple versions of characters throughout this. As we look through the solicits, we see that there is Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel in Avalon. But we also know that in Hala Fields, there is Carol Danvers, the pilot. We know that there's Doctor Strange, who seems to be 1602 Doctor Strange in the court of Doctor Doom as his right hand. But we also know there's another Doctor Strange who's merged with the Punisher in the Battleworld stories. So it's interesting that we're going to have these multiple versions of the same people. And, that certainly explains why Doom doesn't like to have people moving between worlds. Because obviously between worlds, you're going to have these interactions. I wonder what is going to happen when someone realizes that when you get two kings of a world and it's the same person. I wonder how that's going to go over. It hasn't happened yet, but I could imagine that is something that will be coming.
I had a crazy Doom theory.
I'm sorry?
I said I had a crazy Doctor Doom theory.
What is your crazy Doctor Doom theory?
Well, when you said it might be Reed Richards in the armor, it got me thinking, and you were saying his face doesn't look scarred, but he still has the mask on. Maybe it's Reed. Mm-hmm. What if it's Victor Von Doom in the body of a Reed Richards?
Well, actually, along those same lines, I'm going to give you a couple other interesting possibilities. There are two what-if worlds where people have wound up in Doctor Doom's body. One was a Fantastic Four where Reed Richards, basically all the Fantastic Four had different powers, and Reed Richards became just a disembodied brain. but with super mental powers. And at the end, they have a battle with Doom, and basically Reed Richards performs the mind switch on Doom and puts himself in Doom's body. In another universe, another What If universe, a more recent one, Doctor Doom winds up going to college with Tony Stark. And what's interesting is rather than build his machine to contact another dimension, he builds his brain swap machine and just hops into Tony Stark's body, with Tony Stark in the body of Doctor Doom. And then afterwards, Doctor Doom winds up with all of Tony's wealth and builds his own evil Doctor Doom Iron Man armor. And then Tony Stark, who doesn't remember who he is, but still has Tony Stark's genius, winds up back in Latveria and sort of builds his own Doctor Doom armor, but that's red and gold, of course. So, there are people that could be in that armor that aren't Doctor Doom. But my thinking of it is that since you have the Sue Storm, Valeria, and Franklin Richards as the family, I mean, I know there is this idea that you could see Doom just taking, Reed's, wife and family for himself. That's kind of creepy, doomy thing to do. But I guess, like I said, since he had to pull from other universes to build this world, I have to wonder if that aspect had to have come from a world where Sue and Doom were a couple with Valeria and Franklin, and how they would accept that.
Because what if Doom's body didn't survive the battle with the Beyonders, and
exactly.
the only body he could find was of Reed Richards? He would consider that a big shame. He would want to hide that more than scars.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I say, along those same, now, when Reed actually got trapped in Doom's armor, and which is how you started out into that storyline. And essentially what happened in that was, this was shortly after the Heroes Were Born, and Doom stayed on the Heroes Reborn world. And, sorry, I just have some family stuff going on right now. Let's just pause for a minute. We'll delete this out.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I'm sorry, where was I?
Reed and Doom.
Okay, yes. So, sorry. So like I said, so if Doom has to pull from worlds that already exist, and he's building up this world, he might have to pull from a world where that's Reed Richards in the armor. So he might have to pull from that world that is, where it's Reed Richards in the armor. And, if Doom is in this state as a godhead, he might not have a physical representation on Battleworld either. So he might have had to pull Reed Richards in to be Doom. I mean, which might sound a little weird, but I mean, we don't really know what happened to Doom when he faced off against the Beyonders. We just know that somehow he lost. Or at least that's what it seemed to imply, is that he lost. So that he was able to piece this world together is interesting. But, here's an interesting idea, okay?
Mm-hmm.
What if the Doom that pieced Battleworld together wasn't Doctor Doom, wasn't our Doom? Because, so we know there are 12 universes left, right? One of those universes is the universe where Reed never escaped from Doom's armor, where the influence of Doom's armor and the persona of Victor Von Doom was something that Reed had to embrace and be with, okay? What if in that universe, he, because he's thinking like Doom and thinking like Reed Richards, actually found a way to subvert the incursions. And when the universe collapsed, he was the one that was able to rebuild the world. Think about that for a moment, because, the thing is that Reed and Doom apart failed. But what if in one universe where they were together, they succeeded? And actually, so Doom couldn't save the universe or even part of the universe and Reed couldn't even save his family, but this one Doom Reed somewhere in the multiverse was able to solve the problem that none of the others could solve. It's interesting because there was, and again, in the Hickman line, when it was just after the Illuminati and Reed is looking at other universes saying, were there any universes where the Illuminati was a good idea? And what he found out was the only universe where it actually worked was the one where he didn't form the Illuminati and he just did it all himself. That he just was the ultimate badass Reed Richards. And, he was the ultimate he was just the best possible Reed Richards. And that led to the Council of Reeds and the sacrificing of, his family, which he couldn't do. But here in this universe, perhaps in one universe, he actually found the balance. He actually did it right. And it was a universe where he kept Doom's armor and could have Doom's coldness and calculation with Reed Richards' intellect and Reed Richards' ability to find a solution when there were no solutions. He could do the things that had to be done. He could be both the Cabal and the Illuminati all in one ultimate Reed Richards. And I don't mean the ultimate Reed Richards as the ultimate Reed Richards, but just the best possible Reed Richards. So that's a possibility.
If he had Doom's knowledge, he could have used a combination of science and mysticism.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And this is this idea that, when he is, and this was the idea that in Doom's armor, he starts to take on the essence of Doom, Mm-hmm. So that even when he finds a way out of the armor, he actually keeps it on. And in that universe, as I recall, what his plan was he was going to essentially build a matrix and put everybody in the matrix, because he realized that was going to be the one way that you could save humanity. He was just going to build this virtual world of and have everyone connected to it in this computer simulation, rather than having people continue to live their lives. He was going to control it, and that was sort of the final straw for Sue. She said, that is like crazy. You can't just lock people into a computer program and be God. That's not proper. And here we have Doom, who has locked what was left of the universe into this structure, and he is God. So it's a possibility. I guess, at the end of the day, what we have to come to is this question of who is behind the mask, and is it really Doom? We're given that it's Doom. Mm-hmm. But if we're given something so freely, should we really accept it? Should we really accept situation. I'm sorry?
I said, look at the whole female Thor situation.
Yeah, well, exactly. They said, oh, look at Roz, look at Roz. And then, oh, no, not Roz. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Still haven't explained how Jane Foster got the hammer, though.
Or got to the moon.
Yeah. Well, actually, what I think they're going to say is that she didn't get to the moon. The hammer just came to Earth. That the hammer wanted to be with her. I think that's going to be it, is that she, in the way that Thor calls the hammer to him, that she called the hammer to her. And I think that might have been what they were telegraphing there when she goes back and she sends the hammer to fly free, that I think that's what happened, was she was on Earth and she heard the hammer was on the moon, and she looked up at the big old moon and outstretched her hand and called to the hammer, and the hammer came. Because she is the one who is worthy. Unlike Thor. Yes. So it's Secret Wars 2 Battleworld is an interesting place. And I am really going to be interested to see how the most silly aspects of the Marvel Universe are incorporated into this. And again, I say, I'm really interested to see how Deadpool handles his Secret Wars. Because there is more under the surface than meets the eye. And, what else we might get eventually is some explanation of Nathaniel Richards in all of this. Because that was another unsolved mystery from the Hickman run is why the Nathaniel Richards that we were seeing didn't seem like the Nathaniel Richards that we had seen previously. And it seemed to be a Nathaniel Richards who is both younger and very different in his persona than the Nathaniel Richards that we got later. So it's going to be interesting. And speaking of Reed Richards, there was one thing that actually I wanted to talk about last week that we didn't get to, and that is the Fantastic Four trailer that ran before Avengers.
Oh, yeah.
And here's what I got to say. I was so pleased by this, but what really got me excited about this was I was at the theater, and my youngest son is there. My youngest son is the real comic book head. He's the one that really likes the superheroes. And that's great. But as soon as the Thing came on the screen, he says, "Oh, it's the Thing!" And he got so excited for this movie. And I said, that's the key to this film. That is why this film just might actually survive and be a big hit, is because they're going to focus on the Thing. And, the Thing is the most interesting character of the Fantastic Four. Because even if you don't go with the ultimate version, he's still the one guy who doesn't really have a tie, Reed and Sue are dating, or as they are now married, and Johnny and Sue are brother and sister. But Ben, he is the outside person. He is the fourth wheel. He's the one that sort of gets pulled into this mess, into this craziness, which, and from the very first issue, he doesn't want to go into space until Sue starts being all, "Oh, I didn't know you were a coward, Ben Grimm." And it's like, really, Sue? Really? You're going to go there? But, so as the guy who suffers the most, but still is the hero, Ben Grimm is the heart and soul of the Fantastic Four. And if they really focus it on a Thing story, I think this could be really good. It will be very interesting to see how they do it. It'll be very interesting to see if they pull it off. I'm still not 100% convinced that they did, because they did have a lot of problems with the director that's coming out now. And even though other people sort of took over and did it, when you're having someone core to the production not be there, that usually is bad, because you have other people trying to make this other person's vision there when they don't want to be there, and it's not good necessarily, but we'll see. But like I said, hearing my son get excited about the Thing got me excited for this film, and so I'm really looking forward to it now. I'm gonna be honest. It's a real struggle with Ant-Man right now, because that was in there too, and after the excitement of the Thing, it's hard to get excited for Ant-Man. And I never expected that to be the case. But that's where we're at with that. And it's interesting. What did you think of the Fantastic Four trailer, Phil?
I thought it looked good. The effects are good. The Thing looks good. I just hope they have this story.
Yeah, that is the crux of the biscuit. If there's not a good story, it's not going to be a good film.
Yeah.
But like I said, my hope is if they're focusing on the Thing, that could be a good story.
And the Ant-Man trailer, before Guardians of the Galaxy come out, were you excited for Guardians?
Well, me, yeah, but I was a fan of the Guardians before. When they first did the reboot with Star-Lord and Gamera and that whole group, Rocket and Groot, I actually read that book. I actually read that when that first came out. So when I saw that was the one they were doing, I was like, oh, well, that'll be interesting. Now, and I like when people are have the same name as me. So Charlie 23.
I just know I wasn't sure about Guardians. I was hoping for the best, and I was very pleasantly surprised. So.
Oh, I think we can still be very pleasantly surprised by Ant-Man, and I think it's got a lot of strengths to it. I just, it's in this weird place because first off, Avengers is so powerful. I know a lot of people have some nitpicks here and there, but Avengers is a very powerful film, and and like I say, I think if if Fantastic Four hadn't gotten me so excited, I don't think I would have gotten excited by Ant-Man 2. You know what here's I think where we're hitting a wall with or where I might be hitting a wall with Ant-Man. And it goes back to what we talked about during the Ultron discussion about how, the point of these movies is their connection to each other. The point of these movies is that one has led to the other, and you have this thread throughout. And that allows you to use this shorthand so that when we introduce a new character like the Vision, it's not a shock because we've just been waiting for the Vision to show up all movie because we knew he was there. We know who he is. We know what's happening, and we're along for the ride because of that. With Ant-Man, it almost feels like a step back to that Iron Man world where, we're brand new, we're self-contained, we're not part of this larger universe yet. Now, maybe that's going to be not the case at all. And maybe when we get there, it's going to be, just as exciting and just as much a part of that larger Avengers world. And that's going to be great. But just from that trailer, I don't know that that's what it is yet,
So do you think they should have did Ant-Man in Phase 1?
Well, yeah. I think they should have done that. And that is why I'm I was not upset that the guy who was helming it eventually left, because I really felt that Ant-Man should have been in Phase 1. Ant-Man was supposed to be in Phase 1, but the guy who was helming Ant-Man just couldn't get it together to get this film out there. And trust me, I understand how hard it is to make a film, and I don't understand how hard it is to deal with Disney, but I'm sure it was pretty hard, especially when you're getting in, you think you're dealing with Marvel, and then all of a sudden you're dealing with Disney, and you have this whole back and forth with that. I can get how that was a frustration, but I guess to me, to some extent, as a fan, I don't want to hear about how hard your life is. I don't want to hear how annoying it is when you're playing with all the toys that we all want to play with. Yeah. Because it's like, they want me to do an Ant-Man that isn't exactly the way I want to do it. It's like, you get to play with Ant-Man. I don't want to hear it from you. And Ant-Man could have been an Avenger. And that's what kills me is Ant-Man could have been an Avenger. And he will be in Civil War. And so if they can tie it all together, and I think what actually might really tie it all together is Peggy Carter. If they do Peggy Carter tie-ins with Howard, because we know Howard Stark's in this, we know Peggy Carter's in the Ant-Man movie in the flashback scenes. So I think in building out that earlier Marvel universe, that's how they're going to tie themselves in. And that's going to be their connection. And I would not be surprised if we don't see a Phil Coulson or a Quake or a May somewhere in the Ant-Man story, because, that is a part of that universe that they can pull on. They could also pull on anyone else. They could pull on Falcon or even Black Widow or, Peggy Carter or anything like that in there too. I'm excited to see what they do with Hope Van Dyne, because this is very much a MCU character, this version of Hope Van Dyne. Because in other universes, she's actually a villain and stuff like that. This is going to be an interesting way that they're presenting this character, and I'm really intrigued to see that. And so, in that sense, there is stuff the more I think about it, the more excited I get. But right now, I'm excited about what's in my head, not what I've seen yet. And I think that is so as an example, I used to be worried about Fantastic Four because they weren't showing me anything and I was seeing the worst in them not showing me. Now they've showed me stuff, and now I'm excited about Fantastic Four. And Ant-Man, they're showing me stuff, but I'm not getting excited because what they're showing me isn't as good as what's in my head. And I don't expect it to be as good as what's in my head. It very rarely is, but I think what has always been the strength of the Marvel Universe is that even though they don't make a movie of what's in my head, I still like what I see, because they still give me enough to reach out for it and how connected it's going to be. And right now, that's what I'm craving with the Marvel movies. I'm craving that connection. I'm craving that interaction with the greater universe. What really sold Guardians of the Galaxy for me as a comic book fan is that even though it's separate from the larger Marvel universe, although you do have the Guardians tie-in with the Collector at the end of Thor.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's what set up Guardians of the Galaxy, and that's what was the strength of Guardians of the Galaxy. Right now we're going into Ant-Man cold. There wasn't an Ant-Man tie-in at the end of Avengers. There isn't, we don't have something to connect to it. And I think we need that. I think we need to have something, and maybe I don't know where they're going to put it, because S.H.I.E.L.D.'s done now, so I don't know how we're going to get that tie-in, but maybe at the start of that movie, we're going to get that strong tie-in to the rest of the Marvel Universe to spin this as the larger story of the Marvel Universe and how Ant-Man is in there. And especially if we start out with an Ant-Man Hank Pym story, even if it's just a short in there, that would be pretty awesome. Are there going to be any Blu-rays coming out between now and Ant-Man? All the Blu-rays are out, aren't they?
I don't think.
Yeah.
Because the only other thing will probably be, Avengers 2, and I don't think that'll be out yet.
Oh no, that just came out, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I was thinking maybe they could do a short in there or something. But actually what they should do is they should release all the shorts on Blu-ray and have an Ant-Man short in there. But since they haven't been planning that, I don't think they're going to do that. But maybe they'll just have that with the movie itself and just tie it in that larger sense. But that's what I need from Ant-Man, is I need to have it connected to the whole of the Marvel Universe. Because I don't want to just start from scratch anymore. Because they don't seem to be doing that anymore. I mean, when we think about it, Cap 3 is really Avengers 3. And we're going to get Black Panther in there. So Black Panther, when he ties into his story, is already established and already built out. And having the characters grow out of these central movies now, I think, is the way that we're going to be going. At least in some way, at least getting a reference to get you excited for it. And I guess if my biggest complaint about Ant-Man, it's that we don't have that. We don't have that tie-in to it. We don't have that first. We haven't been given the Ant-Man teaser. That's the problem. We don't have an Ant-Man teaser. Avengers didn't end with it. Captain America didn't end with it. Guardians of the Galaxy didn't end with it. And I guess to me that's kind of frustrating because, really Guardians didn't have a didn't have a tie-in at the end. Mm-hmm. The way that, Captain America tied to Avengers, Thor tied to Guardians. Guardians didn't have that. And Avengers didn't really have that either. Didn't have something to get us excited about it. And, Iron Man didn't have that either. Iron Man 3 didn't have something to get us excited about where we're going to go next. And that we're going to Ant-Man next off of the Avengers without a tie from Avengers to Ant-Man, that's frustrating and worrisome to me.
Do you think it would be enough if at the end of Ant-Man, like Captain America or Black Widow came to recruit him for the Avengers?
Oh yeah, no, that will be great. And I'm just going to say that right now. You need an after credit scene in Ant-Man. No more of this, no after scene. No, you need that. And, you can have the mid-credit scene, that's great, but you need an after credit scene. Not having an after credit scene in Ant-Man or in Avengers 2 was a big mistake in my opinion.
Yeah.
Needed something after that. You needed something to get us excited about where we're going to next. I mean, even for what it's worth, Iron Man 3 did have something in that, oh, hey, here's the Hulk. He's still around. He's still a part of this story. The Avengers are still here, and that was fun and exciting. And you need that thing that happens at the end to get us excited. In the same way that even at the end of Incredible Hulk, when, Tony Stark shows up in the bar, you need these things that connect everything together. And if they're not going to have that, right now, what I'm going to say is Ant-Man needs all the help it can get. And and they kind of took the legs out from under it by not having a tie-in at the end of Avengers. Do
you think they had a tie-in, or they had a scene at the very end of Avengers, but they pulled it for some reason?
No, because you know what? Here's the thing. Whedon didn't want it, but I think even if Whedon didn't want it, they would have been able to do something. I think, and for what it's worth, they could have even just had a Hank Pym Easter egg somewhere in it, They could have had something about Hank Pym somewhere in the story. And if they just did that, just had, Pym Industries or, just something in there to give us something, I mean, heck, the fact that you have Helen Cho in the Avengers and didn't give us some reference to Amadeus Cho, that, to me, that's a little weak too. That because that could have been something awesome too. I mean, granted, you didn't have a place for that. And that's the thing. I'm going to give that as a pass because, okay, we're going to fit a 13-year-old kid into this, especially if you have to build a relationship with the Hulk with them. Goodness, that's just going to be a bear, although perhaps what would have been awesome, is if when you had her and Mark Ruffalo talking, she could have mentioned, how her son is a big fan of his, that might have been cool. You could have done something like that. But I get that, sometimes I think these, the people making these films get a little too clever by half and they think they're, I don't want to pander. It's like, just give us a little something, Mm-hmm. It's not going to hurt you to give us something that we can use. And it builds the franchise. It builds the good faith. And, but, I know that making these films has got to be insanely stressful too. So I don't necessarily fault them for it, but I just think that, right now Ant-Man needs to be tied to the greater Marvel universe. And however they do that, it's what they're going to need. And I kind of feel like they need to do that before the movie opens. I'm sure there'll be something when we're watching it where we're going to like, oh yeah, that's that and that's that. Because we're going to get Peggy, we're going to get Howard, we're going to get those early origins of the Marvel universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe in there. But if they don't tie it back to something larger, so that we know going in, oh, this is how it's going to tie in, I think it's going to put Ant-Man in a much weaker position than it should be, than it needs to be.
Do you think they're kind of doing like a soft restart or trying for a clean slate now that Joss Whedon's gone?
They might be, but I wouldn't know why they do that. It's like, well, we just had another $1 billion film. Let's try to get as far away from that as possible. It's not really.
I don't think get away from it, but just give it some breathing room.
Yeah, well, I can see the idea of saying, that the Marvel Universe is a bigger thing than just the Avengers. Mm-hmm. And to that extent, okay, that's great. But then, maybe you should have had a tie-in somewhere else along the line. Maybe you should have had something a little, and again, it's like, if they had referenced, Pym particles or anything, in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., or, given some kind of lead in that, maybe that would have had, it would have built it out, and that's the thing. That's what I need to know. I need to know that there's going to be something that ties, the Ant-Man story into our larger Marvel universe, aside from just the fact that they happen to exist in the same universe. It's this thing, that, prior to the Avengers, all these superheroes existed in the same universe, but, they didn't necessarily interact. And that's fine to some extent, but at this point, I think that where we are with the films is that they do need to have that interaction. I think that is as much a part of the film as its own individual arc. These are in their own way. They should be serial films where when you do 24 hours of a Marvel marathon or however many hours of a Marvel marathon that you want to do, that there is this through line through it where you understand how these characters are building out a larger universe and how what happens to Captain America affects the Hulk and what happens to the Hulk affects Iron Man, in a way that's a little bit more powerful, and, that's what I want to see in this, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It can't be Battleworld. It can't be a bunch of kingdoms. It has to be one unified globe of superheroes. and other people within a superheroic world. You have to have super scientists and super soldiers and all of these things that are these these exciting and fascinating things, and that's what we want to get to. And and certainly Hank Pym fits into that world. He is a super scientist, and Paul Rudd as Ant-Man, or Scott Lang as Ant-Man, is that very much man on the street character who has to face this. And, there is some tie to this, because there is this idea that, the reason why Hank Pym kept his Pym particles away is because he knew that if you gave everyone godlike powers, it's a bad idea. And, and so in how Ant-Man leads into Civil War, that's going to be strong too. But, I guess what I'll say is, I think they need to let us know how Ant-Man ties into Civil War in a much stronger way right now. And, maybe what they need to do is give us more of the Hank Pym story going into this, so that we can see how he is part of the, so that if they start in the next couple trailers, if you see a lot more of Hank Pym in them, I think that's going to give us some of what, without giving away what happens with Scott Lang's character, gives us the tie of Hank Pym to the Marvel Universe, Yeah. Oh, and that I think is all the connections we have for tonight. You can certainly write me and tell me how wrong I am about everything I say at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Charlie Esser. And Phil, where can they tell you why you're wrong?
Well, you can email me and tell me I know nothing at nightwingpdp@gmail.com. And on Twitter, I'm at nightwingpdp.
And of course, for you, they'll tell you how right you are, because, man, you nailed Thor's identity. You were
After the second time,
so rock solid on the ball. I bow to your greatness on that. And if you don't know what we're talking
about, mark my words.
Yes, if you don't know what I'm talking about, listen to the all-new Marvel Roundup, and you'll see just how perfect of a genius Phil is, because he was so right about Thor's identity. Every aspect of it, like right down to like, oh wow, he even saw that was going to be the tie-in there. And yes, so listen to the all-new Marvel Roundup, and connect with us again on Superconnectivity next week. Because there is actually a lot more to the Marvel Universe than just Battleworld, and we do the connections here. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.